So I'm a little bit out of touch with the action on the ground for the simple reason that I experienced COVID. I caught it in March. I was on a ventilator, so I was in intensive care for 48 days, and I was in hospital in all for 3 months. And as you can hear, I'm a little bit sort of breathless. That's partly because I just had to dash to the phone, but I am generally. And so I'm in what is called long COVID or long tail COVID is what I'm experiencing. You've read about it in social media or in the newspapers or heard it on the media. I've taken part in some of those because it's a much underestimated uh, characteristic of the COVID pandemic. In other words, people get ill and have flu symptoms, of course. People also tragically die. And we know, for example, in the US, 212,000 people have died in the US. We've had 1 million victims all over the world. This can't be underestimated or somehow or other brushed under the carpet as if it's insignificant. But many of the people who had COVID, it may be as much as 10%, experience medium, long term, and lifetime consequences. So, for example, in my case, I will never get the full sight in my left eye back. It's how I would describe it as foggy. I've lost the hearing in my ear. I've lost the feeling in my toes. I have varicose veins, increased arthritis. Anyway, I could go on. There's a catalogue, and people will tell you. And also, it's affected my, not exactly my thinking, but my ability to take on complex multimodal things that happen. So standing in a supermarket or indeed looking at that strip of faces up the top there poses some kind of a problem for me. So let's not underestimate what this long COVID is, and it can affect anybody, even asymptomatic people who experience it. So this is particularly relevant for our students, many of whom may get COVID, be tested positive, be asymptomatic or just hardly feel anything, but then later experience some of these long-term effects because it appears as if the COVID virus not only attacks as people thought, the cells in the respiratory system, but it appears to attack the whole vascular system, the veins and arteries, that is, but also possibly for some of us attacks the nervous system as well. Quite the mechanism for doing this is yet to be unraveled, but we shall see. But it's quite clear that it's a virus that has complex effects analogous to people who describe ME or the post-viral syndromes coming off glandular fever and other illnesses. So that's the background to how dangerous this COVID is. So my first comment would be, of course, to express solidarity with the action students are taking, because, when we are faced anywhere in the world with threats to our lives and our livelihoods, but threats to our lives, we are entitled to take action in order to safeguard our lives. And people watching this or hearing this will know from their experiences of migration or of threats due to chemical waste, all sorts of things in our lives. It is incumbent on people experiencing the threat to take action, because we can't assume that governments and security forces or whatever will do it for us. We cannot always assume that somehow or other those in leadership positions will do this. It doesn't take me to remind us all of this absolutely disastrous policy of this government to set up this whole test and trace mechanism that should have been in place in February or early March, at any rate, should certainly have been in there right from the beginning. They knew the dangerous nature of this illness, that it passed not only from animals to humans, which is how it started, we think, probably, but from human to human. The moment they knew that and knew it was causing fatalities, they should have put a test and trace policy in place and run by the public health authorities in the localities. This is not some trivial bureaucratic point I'm making here. The point is the knowledge of localities is held in localities. It's a kind of obvious truism I'm saying here. It isn't held in the mind of somebody who runs TalkTalk and screwed up the data of TalkTalk. and it isn't held in the minds of people who are in for making a quick buck out of what is a disaster for the populace and for the people at large. So, we can see that this government's first approach is to look round at the kinds of people who contribute to their party or contribute in some way or another to their milieu and assume that people like them will know how to do it. So what we've had is a piecemeal, disastrous test and trace. I mean, you can't even call it that. It's not complete testing, and it certainly isn't complete tracing. Hundreds and hundreds of examples, have been given to us on the mass media, or people watching will know how difficult it has been. When I got ill, I could not get tested. That was in late March, so I couldn't get tested at the GPs. I couldn't go to A&E, and when I spoke to on 111, when I spoke there, essentially they told me just to sit tight. If I'd sat tight that night, I would have died. It is that simple. I had reached a point, just to be technical about it, my oxygen saturation was down to 58. That means you are dying. And that's where I was before, very luckily, through the intervention of a friend who was a GP, that my wife took me straight to A&E. But the point is, I can't have been the only one. We know, for example, in those early days, bus drivers were dying because they were absolutely at the interface between one person with people coming time and time again into close proximity, breathing on them. We can see from the White House, irony of ironies, that just one garden party can cause this illness to spread. It's highly infectious, contagious, whatever's the appropriate word. So I say once more, it's total solidarity with the students. We are entitled to take action to protect our safety. And then, of course, the UCU, which is my own union, as a member of the Goldsmiths, on the teaching staff of Goldsmiths, we have to draw the line. What is safe to do? If the only safe thing to do is to teach online, then we must do it. Teaching online is not impossible. It's not ideal, of course. But if it's the only way in which we can stay safe for the time being, it's not going to happen forever, then we must do it. We must insist on doing it. And the only people who can insist, ultimately, are the people concerned. In this case, it's the Union of Teachers, the University Teachers, University College Union. So I'm here today to express solidarity, if you like, from the other side of the wall, or both sides of the wall, if you like, both as a teacher in universities and also someone who visits schools. It's possibly there that I caught it in the first place. I don't think schools are a particularly safe place at the moment, but with our colleagues and brothers and sisters in schools, it's not easy. So solidarity from me from the other side of COVID. All the best to you all.